Support for Colorado Today comes from Credit Union of Colorado. With access to over 30,000 ATMs and a mobile app, they're dedicated to offering the services of a big bank with a heart. Learn more at honestlygood.org.
Support for Colorado Today comes from Safeway, where teachers can save 5% every day. Download the Safeway app and verify your teacher status for exclusive offers and discounts. Get started at Safeway.com or in the Safeway app.
I love Mexico City. Last time I went there, I rode a hot air balloon over the pyramids. Seriously, it was unreal. And if you've ever wanted to visit, I got good news. It's about to get cheaper to get there. A direct flight from Denver will be available later this year, starting at about $200. I'm Arlo Pérez Esquivel. Coming up, an effort to make Snapchat, Instagram, and Facebook safer for kids.
The goal of this bill is to have large social media companies enforce their own policies on illegal activities.
Then, Colorado's Democrats want to double down on controversial protections for immigrants.
We're intruding into this domain that is not ours.
Plus, fundraising for Denver's Pride Parade is struggling amid pushback against DEI. And your weekend art spotlight.
People are captivated by their performance, and you could literally hear a pin drop.
It is Thursday, April 17th. Here's the news in Colorado today. Under a new bill, Instagram, Facebook, and other social media platforms will have to do more to enforce their own policies on illegal activities, like sex trafficking, as well as the sale of guns and drugs. But there's wide speculation that Governor Jared Polis will veto it. Advocates for the bill rallied this week to ask him to make it law.
Senate Bill 86 was created to address obvious and intolerable harms occurring through social media.
They feel there's not enough oversight, which means bad actors get, quote, endless chances to do harm.
If this kind of conduct that we see on these social media platforms was happening on the street, there would be no question about intervention.
CPR's Benta Berkland has been covering this and other attempts to clamp down on underage access to online internet content. Hey, Benta.
Hi.
Can you tell us more about what companies like Meta would have to do differently in Colorado if Polis signs the bill I mentioned?
So this measure would require large social media companies like Snapchat, Instagram, to respond to Colorado law enforcement investigation requests within 72 hours. That's unless a court grants an extension. They'd also have to maintain a staffed hotline for communicating with state law enforcement related to search warrants and investigations. They'd have to collect data on all of this and report it back to the state. And it does go beyond law enforcement investigations. So let's say a regular user sees something they think could be illegal on social media. They would flag that to the company. Companies would have to investigate it. And if it's found that, yes, that's violating the policy, they would have a certain amount of time, but they'd have to remove the account.
And who is championing this and why?
Colorado's Attorney General Phil Weiser's backing the bill, and it has the support of many district attorneys, law enforcement professionals, school districts, Colorado Children's Hospital. But it really has been the parents and parents who've lost children to things like drug overdoses from drugs they've bought on social media that have been the biggest driver of this. I talked to Chelsea Congan. She's from Aspen, and her son Miles was at CU Boulder, and he was 19 when he died. And this was days after he'd injured his shoulder. He'd purchased what he thought was Percocet on Snapchat. It was laced with fentanyl. And she said Snapchat never responded to Boulder law enforcement's request to help track down the person who sold this to Miles.
If that crime is unsolved and that person is still out there, or theoretically, that person who has a Snapchat account is still out there. And if this is still their business, they're still selling things that contain fentanyl on a social media platform that every single kid uses.
One other thing I'll note about this legislation, it has broad bipartisan support. and also a smaller but equally bipartisan opposition.
Let's talk about that opposition for a second. I know that Governor Jared Polis is mulling a veto. What is he concerned about?
Polis's office testified against this bill, and I talked to a spokesperson for Polis. They cited concerns about the bill's impact on innovation, freedom, and privacy. They said the governor isn't comfortable with the government forcing private social media companies to act as law enforcement. And he'll review the final version of the legislation, which is on his desk as we speak.
So how long does he have to make a decision?
The governor has about a week left to sign it or veto it. And if he does veto the bill, there would still be enough time in the legislative session and enough support, at least based on who originally voted for the bill, to override that veto.
Now, we mentioned in the beginning that there's another effort to protect youth from another type of online content. What was that about and what happened to it?
Yes, this was another bill that would have strengthened age restrictions for accessing online pornography. And that proposal had broad support. It cleared its first committee 8-1, but the sponsors pulled the proposal due to concerns from Polis and because of an upcoming U.S. Supreme Court case. And that's a case stemming from Texas, a similar age restriction policy. A lawsuit from the porn industry says these kinds of policies put undue burdens on adults' access to protected speech.
Benta, thank you for sharing your reporting.
Thanks.
Also at the Capitol, immigrants in Colorado would have more protections under a new proposal from Democrats. While the Trump administration tries to use every lever to remove people and encourage them to leave the country voluntarily, these Colorado lawmakers want to restrict ICE's access in the state and make it harder to use identifying information given to public institutions to deport people. Here's sponsor Julie Gonzalez.
By putting forward this legislation, Colorado stands proudly alongside states throughout the country who are taking steps to solidify immigrants' civil rights in a number of issues.
Specifically, the Democrats' proposal tries to prevent public daycares and health clinics, as well as city and county governments, from sharing information like immigrants' addresses with ICE, so they can keep using these services without fear it'll directly lead to deportation.
We also really drafted a lot of this policy in response to the actual tactics that we have seen be utilized by ICE now under the second Trump administration.
The bill would also prevent jails from letting ICE pick up people inside part of their buildings that aren't open to the public. That's similar to the way it already works in places like Denver, where ICE agents have to wait outside for someone to walk out the door.
And Mayor Johnston, who's Abraham Gonzalez?
Thank you, Congressman. He is a individual that was released from the county jail on Friday in the city and county of Denver.
Republican Congressman Jim Jordan pushed Denver's mayor on this policy last month because Gonzalez fought back.
They have to arrest him in the parking lot. They bring 6 officers when they could have had 1 or 2 just come in your facility, in the jail, and take the guy there. But you won't do it that way.
The Democrats' new proposal at the state capitol would also restrict ICE access in schools and healthcare facilities. The bill has other mechanisms as well to give people more ability to clean up minor convictions on their records and allow immigrants easier access to things like in-state tuition. Republicans at the State House have tried to do the opposite. They ran a bill to roll back the restraints on law enforcement cooperation with ICE. Democrats killed that bill, and now Republicans will try to at least stop the protections for immigrants from being expanded. Paul Londine is Republican leader.
We're intruding into this domain that is not ours. Immigration policy, at the end of the day, is not the primary province of the state, but it is, in fact, a federal policy. And we are taking steps here that will weaken federal definitions, federal understandings of immigration status and the appropriate interactions with regard to individuals who have the various statuses.
The Democrats' bill is about halfway through the legislative process. It could pass the Senate as soon as today and go to the State House. Will this June's Denver Pride Parade be as big as previous ones? Organizers of the Pride festivities that attract about 500,000 people tell CPR News they've only been able to raise a fraction of the sponsorship money they usually have by now. CPR's Elaine Tassi spoke with Bozzy. She got the news via an email from Pride presenters at the Center on Colfax. Interim CEO Natalie Zanoni said fundraising is $230,000 behind last year.
She said that some organizations that have participated in the past have only been able to return at lower levels of sponsorship. And she said that some of the other ones have not even been able to return at all.
This is a big issue this year for the Denver Pride Parade. Is this also happening elsewhere?
It is happening elsewhere. Other cities have been seeing the same sorts of drops in funding for their Pride parades, too. And so lots of cities are right now, preparing and fundraising and seeing what they have on, in their coffers. And the New York Times reported last month that nationwide, many longtime corporate sponsors are either scaling their support for Pride way back or ending it completely, at least partially because of President Donald Trump's fight against DEI initiatives.
And here in Denver, do you know which sponsors have pulled their support?
No, I tried to find that out, but the reason that she said no was basically to protect the privacy and to respect them. She said in the email, "We believe that focusing too much on numbers and calling out sponsors by name encourages more negativity and shame, and we do not want to portray ourselves as an organization in need of pity, especially with our audience's mixed feelings surrounding sponsorships."
Mixed feelings about sponsors. Last year, a number of people in the LGBTQ community questioned whether organizers of Denver Pride should accept certain sponsors. They felt some corporations were using rainbow flags to increase profits rather than truly support the community.
Because pride is not something that is handed to you by Target or a bank. It lives in your heart.
Do you know at this point how these funding issues could affect this year's events?
Well, Bozzy, I can only imagine it's going to have an impact as far as the elaborateness of the event. But right now, since we're only in the middle of April, they still have until, the end of June. And it's possible that they'll get some new sponsors between now and then. But they haven't shared whether or not they actually have identified new funders, or if so, who they are.
So more to come. Elaine Tassi, thank you.
Oh, you're welcome, Bozzy. Thanks for having me on.
Hell yeah. Hell yeah. Hell yeah.
Hell Yeah is a song by Denver-based rapper Old Man Saxon. He is just one of the more than 400 artists you'll be able to catch at the FOCO MX Music Festival in Fort Collins, which starts tomorrow.
FOCO MX, for me, is the kickoff to music festival season here in Colorado, and it is such a fun weekend in my hometown.
Alicia Sweeney is CPR's local music director. She gave us the scoop on who to look out for at this weekend's festival.
There's a group called Frail Talk that put out an album last year that we featured in the local 303. Their music is lo-fi indie pop. You expect it to be loud, but no, people are captivated by their performance, and you could literally hear a pin drop. We have Elka, which is a rising artist out of the Northern Colorado music scene. Denver artists like Cherokee Social. Also at the festival, the band In the Whale is going to be playing one of their final shows.
The artists will be performing at more than 35 venues across downtown Fort Collins, including outdoor stages. So, if you haven't looked at the weather lately,
you're going to need to bring a coat. Each year is kind of unpredictable, but in the forecast, there is some snow coming.
FOCO MX starts at 3 p.m. tomorrow and runs through midnight on Saturday. Tickets are still on sale, but
if you can't make it to Fort Collins and you want to follow along, Indie1023 over on Instagram. That's INDIE1023. I'll be covering the fest.
Lauren Antonoff Hart writes the CO Arts Spotlight. Check out her full list of arts happenings at the link in our show notes. That cold weather, though, isn't waiting for the weekend. It is already here. It's gonna snow today and tomorrow, so it's a great time to stay in, listen to some podcasts, and while you have that podcast app open, remember to follow Colorado Today. I'm Arlo Perez Esquivel. This is CPR News.
Support for Colorado Today comes from Credit Union of Colorado. With access to over 30,000 ATMs and a mobile app, they're dedicated to offering the services of a big bank with a heart. Learn more at honestlygood.org.
Support for Colorado Today comes from Safeway. Get everything you need for your Easter celebration. Safeway makes it easy with spiral sliced ham, fresh spring flowers, and candy for your Easter baskets. Get started at Safeway.com or in the Safeway app.